So, we are going to read The Statement of Randolph Carter by H.P. Lovecraft. I repeat to you, gentlemen, that your inquiry is fruitless. Detain me here forever if you will. Confine or execute me if you must have a victim to perpetuate the illusion you call justice. But I can say no more than I have said already. Everything that I can remember, I have told with perfect candor. Nothing has been distorted or concealed, and if anything remains vague, it is only because the dark cloud which has come over my mind, that cloud and the nebulous nature of the horrors which brought it upon me. Again I say, I do not know what has become of Harley Warren, though I think, almost hope, he is in peaceful oblivion, if there is anything so blessed a thing. It is true that I have for 5 years been his closest friend, and a partial sharer of his terrible research into the unknown. I will not deny, though my memory is uncertain and indistinct, that this witness of yours may have seen us together, as he says, on the Gainesville Pike, walking towards Big Cypress Swamp at 11:30 on that awful night. That we bore electronic lanterns, spades, and a curious coil of wire which, with attached instruments, I will even affirm, for these things all played a part in the single hideous scene which remains burned into my shaken recollection. But of what followed, and of the reason I was found alone and dazed on the edge of the swamp the next morning, I must insist that I know nothing save what I have told you over and over again. You say to me that there is nothing in the swamp or near it which could form the setting of that frightful episode. I repeat that I know nothing beyond what I saw. Visions or nightmares, it may have been. Visions or nightmare, I fervently hope it was. Yet it is all that my mind retains of what took place in those shaking hours after we left the sight of men. And when Harley Warren did not return, he or his shade, or some nameless thing I cannot describe, alone can tell. As I have said before, the weird studies of Harley Warren were well known to me, and to some extent shared by me. Of his vast collection of strange and rare books, on forbidden subjects I have read all that are written in languages of which I am master. But there are a few as compared to those languages that I could not understand. Most, I believe, are in Arabic. And the fiend-inspired book which brought on the end, the book that he carried in his pocket out into the world, was written in characters which characters whose like I never saw anywhere else. Warren would never tell me what was in that book. As to the nature of our studies, must I say again that I no longer retain full comprehension? It seems to me rather merciful that I do not, for they were terrible studies, which I pursued with more reluctant fascination than through actual inclination. Warren always dominated, but sometimes I feared him. I remember how I shuddered at his facial expression on the night before that awful happening, when he talked so incessantly of his theory, why certain corpses never decay and rest firm and fat in their tombs for thousands of years. But I do not fear him now, for I suspect that he has known horrors beyond my ken. Now I fear for him. Once more, I say that I have no clear idea of the subject of that night. Certainly, it must have to do with something in the book that Warren carried with him. That ancient book in undecipherable characters which has come to him from India a month before. but I swear I do not know what was there that we expected to find. Your witness says that he saw us 11:30 in Gainesville Pike, in Gainesville Pike, heading to Big Cypress Swamp. This is probably true, but I have no distinct memory of it. The picture seared into my soul is of one scene only, and the hour must have been long after midnight, for the waning crescent moon was high in the vaporous heavens. The place was an ancient cemetery, so ancient that I trembled at the manifold sign of immemorable years. It was a deep, damp hollow, overgrown with rank grass, moss, and curious creeping vines, and filled with a vague stench, which my idle fancy associated absurdly with rotting stone. On every hand were the signs of neglect and decrepitude, and I seemed haunted by the notion that Warren and I were the first living creatures to invade a lethal silence of centuries. Over the valleys rimmed a waning crescent moon, peering through the noisome vapors that seemed to emanate from the unheard-of catacombs. And by a feeble, wavering beam, I could distinguish the repellent array of antique slabs, urns, cenotaphs, and mausolean facades, all crumbling, moss-grown, and moisture-stained, and partly concealed by the gross luxuriance of the unhealthy vegetation. My first vague impression of my own presence in this terrible necropolis concerned the act of pausing with Warren before a certain half-obscured tomb, and of throwing down some burdens which we seemed to have been carrying. I now observed that I had with me an electric lantern and 2 spades, while my companion was supplied with a similar lantern and a portable phone outfit. No words were uttered, for the spot and the task seemed known to us, and without delay we seized our spades and commenced to clearing away the grass, weeds, and drafted earth from the flat, archaic mortuary. After uncovering the entire surface, which consists of 3 immense granite slabs, we stepped away for some distance to survey the scene, and Warren appeared to be making some mental calculations. When he returned to the tomb and used his spade as a lever, sought to pry open the slab laying nearest to the stony ruin, which may have been a monument in its day. He did not succeed and motioned me to come to his assistance. Finally, our combined strength loosened the stone, which we raised and tipped to one side. The removal of the slab released a black aperture, from which rushed an effluence of miasmal gases so noxious that we startled back in horror. After an interim, however, we approached the pit again and found that the exhalations less unbearable. Our lanterns disclosed the top of a flight of stone steps, dripping from with a detestable or ichor of the inner earth, and bordered by moist walls and crest with niter. And now, for the first time in my memory, records vocal discourse, Warren addressing me at length with his mellow tenor voice, a voice singularly unperturbed by our awesome surroundings. "I'm sorry that I have to ask you to stay on the surface," he said. "It would be a crime to let anyone with your frail nerves go down there. You cannot imagine, even from what you have read and from what I've told you, the things that I shall have to come see, or that I have to see and do. It's fiendish work, Carter, and I doubt any man without ironclad sensibilities would ever see it through and come back up alive and sane." I do not wish to offend you, and heaven knows I'd be glad enough to have you with me, but the responsibility is in a certain sense mine, and I wouldn't drag a bundle of nerves like you down to a possible death or madness. I tell you, you cannot imagine what the thing is really like, but I promise to keep you informed through the telephone of every move. You see, I've enough wire here to reach the center of the earth and back. I can still hear, in memory, those coolly spoken words. I could still remember my reminiscence. I seemed desperately anxious to accompany my friend into those tomb depths, yet he proved inflexibly abhorrent. At one time, he threatened to abandon the expedition if I remained insistent, a threat that proved effective, since he alone held the key to the thing. All this I can still remember, though I no longer know what manner of thing we sought. After he had secured my reluctant acquiescence to his design, Warren picked up the reel of wire and adjusted the instruments. At his nod, I took one of the latter and seated myself upon an aged, discolored gravestone close to the newly uncovered aperture. Then he shook my hand, shouldered the coil of wire, and disappeared within the indescribable ossuary. For a moment, I kept sight of the glow of his lantern, and heard the rustle of wire that he laid down after him. But the glow soon disappeared abruptly, as if a turn in the staircase had been encountered. And the sound died almost as quickly. I was alone, yet bound to the unknown depths by those magic strands whose insulated surface lay green beneath the struggling beams of the waning crescent moon. In the lone silence of the hoary and deserted city of the dead, my mind conceived the most ghastly phantoms and illusions. The grotesque shrines and monoliths seemed to assume hideous personalities, a half-sentience. Amorphous shadows seemed to lurk in the darker recesses of the weed-choked hollow, and to flit as in some blasphemous ceremonial procession past the portals of the moldering tombs on the hillside, shadows which could not have been cast by the pallid, peering crescent moon. I constantly consoled my watch by the light of my electric lantern and listened with feverish anxiety to the receiver of the telephone, but for more than a quarter of an hour, heard nothing. Then, a faint clicking came from the instrument, and I called down to my friend in a tense voice. Apprehensive as I was nevertheless unprepared for the words that would come from the uncanny vault in accents more alarming and quivering than any I had heard from Harley Warren. He who had so calmly left me with a little less while previously, now called from below with a shaky whisper, with more portentous than the loudest shriek. "Gods! If you could see what I'm seeing!" I couldn't answer. Speechless, I could only wait. And then came a frenzied tone again. "Carter! It's terrible! Monstrous! Unbelievable!" This time my voice did not fail me, and I poured into the transmitter a flood of excited questions. Terrified, I continued to repeat, "Warren, what is it? What is it?" This time, once more came the voice of my friend, still hoarse with fear, and now apparently tinged with despair. "I can't tell you, Carter. It's too utterly beyond thought. I dare not tell you. No man could know it and live. Great God, I've never dreamed of this!" Stillness again, save for my now coherent torrent of shuddering inquiries. Then the voice of Warren, in a pitch wilder consternation. "Carter, for the love of God, put the slab back and get out of here if you can. Quick! Leave everything else and make for outside. It's your only chance. do as I say, and do not question me to explain. I heard, yet was only able to repeat my frantic questions. Around me were the tombs and the darkness and the shadows. Below me, some peril beyond the radius of human imagination. But my friend was in greater danger than I, and through my fears, I felt a vague resentment that he should deem me capable of deserting him under such circumstances. More clicking, and after a pause, a pitiful cry from Warren. "Beat it! For God's sakes, put back the slabs and beat it, Carter!" Something in the boyish slang of my evidently shaken companion unleashed my faculties. I formed and shouted a resolve. "Warren! Brace up! I'm coming down!" But at this offer, the tone of my auditorator changed to a scream of utter despair. "Don't! You don't understand! It's too late, and it's my fault! Put back the slab and run! There's nothing else you or anyone can do!" The tone changed again, this time acquiring a softer quality, as of hopeless resignment. Yet it remained tense through anxiety for me. "Quick! Before it's too late!" I tried not to heed him, to try to break through the paralysis which held me, and fulfilled my vow to rush down to his aid. But his next whisper found me still held invert to the chains of the stark terror. "Carter, hurry! It's no use. You must go. Better one than two. The slab." A pause, more clicking than the faint voice of Warren. "Nearly over now. Don't make it harder. Cover up those damn steps and run for your life. You're losing time. So long, Carter. Won't see you again." Here Warren's whisper swelled into a cry that gradually rose into a shriek, fraught of all the horror of the ages. "Curse these hellish things. Legions, my God! Beat it! Beat it! Beat it!" After that was silence. I know not how many terminable eras I sat stupefied, whispering, muttering, calling, crying into that telephone. Over and over again, through those eons, I whispered and muttered and called and shouted and screamed, "Warren! Warren! Answer me! Are you there?" And then there came to me the crowning horror of all, the unbelievable, unthinkable, almost unmentionable thing. I have said eons seemed to muttered and called and shouted and screamed, "Warren! Warren! Answer me! Are you there?" And then there came to me the crowning horror of all, the unbelievable, unthinkable, almost unmentionable thing. I have said eons seemed to ellipse after Warren shrieked forth his last desperate warning, and there only my cries now broke the hideous silence. But after a while there was a further clicking on the receiver, and I strained my ear to hear it. Again I called out, "Warren, are you there?" And in response I heard the thing which had brought the cloud over my mind. I do not try, gentlemen, to account for the thing, that voice, nor can I venture to describe it in detail, since the first words took away my consciousness and created a mental block which reaches to the time of my awakening to the hospital. Shall I say that the voice was deep, hollow, grotesque, remote, unearthly, inhuman, dismembered? What shall I say? It is the end of my experience, and it is the end of my story. I hear it and knew no more. I hear it as I sat petrified on that unknown cemetery in the hollow among the crumbling stones and falling tombs, the rank vegetation and the vapors. I heard it well from the innermost depths of the damned open tomb as I watched amorphous, necrotic shadows dance beneath an accursed waning moon. And this is all it said: "Fool! Warren is dead."